also members of our city staff, and also members of the public that are with us tonight. We do have a time for public comment right now. If anyone would like to address the RDA, please feel free to step to the mic and let us know your name, where you live, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We don't have any presentations or reports tonight, and no consent items as well. We'll move on to action items. Number 1, consideration of Resolution R 2021-04, approving an easement agreement with Bighorn Inc. relative to agency property located at approximately 1500 West Riverdale Road. And Mr. Agate, would you like to present that?
Yeah, I can briefly summarize what we talked about in the work session. Bighorn LLC, in working with Reagan, is requesting this of the RDA of Riverdale City. As noted, for a very long time, the city, well, I guess the RDA board, not the city, has been going back and forth with Bighorn trying to work through this resolution for the continued perpetual easement and access easement for the Reagan billboard signs as part of the purchase of the corner property with the RDA board. Our city RDA attorney, I keep saying city, our RDA attorney, Adam Long, has defended the RDA's interests pretty heavily in working through this agreement, feels comfortable with where things are at, has also discussed it with Mr. Brooks, our city attorney, and Mr. Brooks can add to any thoughts he has about that, but he seems to be comfortable with what's been proposed. The only thing that has been requested to be amended is found in Article 6 under termination, that instead of it saying a 12-month termination provision, it be a 24-month termination provision. Other than that, and we as staff are supportive of that, and Mr. Long seems to be supportive of that as well in his comments. He says that seems a lot better than what had been discussed otherwise by Bighorn's group. So we feel comfortable with where things are at. I believe from my own perspective, representing what Dee and Roger's discussions have been in the past, that it does reflect what they were hoping for and wanting, as far as still allowing the RDA to be able to explore use of the property and the ability to place signage on the property and to be able to do other clearances with the property in a way that doesn't jeopardize the ability for the Reagan billboard to continue operating as they desire on Reagan's side. So it feels like it has fulfilled the compromise goals that originally were intended way back when Roger started discussing this property. So with that, I think that's all I would add, unless, Steve, you want to add any more?
I don't know that I'd do a whole lot more. I mean, the one part that I was concerned about is how much it would affect the RDA, and there was one paragraph in there that I was a little bit concerned with the language on it, so I went back to Adam, and which, by the way, he's been worth every penny. He's good. This is one of the finest RDA attorneys I've ever worked with. And not only in this deal, but with Ted Heaps, he's been phenomenal in protecting our interest. That's been vital. But I did express to him my concern about the language on that. There were a couple other things that we ended up changing. One of them was that term. Originally it was the 5 years. We shot back with the 1, and then we ended up with the 2, which is better. But anyway, there was that language was my concern. Does it affect us, and is it going to interfere with our sign? And Adam felt we were good, and I think we are. There's a lot of slope. There's room in there, so I don't think it's going to affect us, quite honestly. We should be fine, but I just wanted to confirm that with him because that was the one big hang-up that I had, and Adam felt we were good. So he said he thinks where we're at now is palatable.
Is there any discussion from the board members? Mr. Stevens.
Okay. It was discovered when Roger was with us and he was looking at it that for whatever reasons the sign was not on the property it was said to be on. So does this move it? Or is it going to be relocated? Or
The answer is yes. So the billboard relocation and redevelopment of the sign went to the Planning Commission for conditional use permit review per requirement of our city code. It did receive that approval from the Planning Commission. They will have to submit a sign application permit. They have submitted the sign permit itself, but then there'll need to be a building permit that comes with that has to be submitted and reviewed by our building official to be relocated. So it's basically a relocation in the context of it. being placed on the bill or on the Bighorn property correctly, but at all intents and purposes, it will feel like somewhat a new sign build of their existing sign.
Can this be put on hold to put something in there about the sunset of Bighorn's involvement?
I'm trying to think. I don't know. Again, going off of and this is maybe where I wish Adam Long had been here, is a question like that. I hope I can adequately answer it, and Steve, you may have to help me, but I think Bighorn, or Adam would say that really is a discussion between Bighorn and Reagan as far as what he thinks should occur. I think that in the past he has gone along that line of questioning, and there's been a lot of pushback about even the sale of the property if we try to, as the RDA, dictate the terms of that relationship. And so, because the goal of the RDA was to acquire that corner parcel, he backed off of that conversation. That's what my recollection is. He feels like at this point, with what's being requested in the RDA's intent to acquire the property, that really isn't something that we need to get in the weeds on at this point. But
Okay, then the follow-up on that is, in the future, what leverage does Bighorn have on that easement as pertains to the RDA, and what the RDA chooses to do with that property?
Again, I don't know, Steve, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I mean, the easement's going to attach that property. I think regardless of where it ends up, whether it's RDA's or ultimately we would want to
I'm
get
sorry,
rid
let
of
me
that.
restate that. Is it the RDA's? I'm sorry, who owns the easement? Bighorn?
The RDA would make the easement available to Reagan.
Reagan.
To Reagan. Reagan's
Oh.
named in the agreement. So it's actually Reagan that's recipient of the perpetual easement.
Okay,
That's
all
correct.
right. That's I
Bighorn,
missed that.
that's where Bighorn gets cut out of it. Bighorn's basically getting excised through the purchase of the property, and the relationship then becomes between the RDA and Reagan at that point. But Bighorn
right,
is
I missed
sponsoring
that.
the
Right.
agreement.
Which, I mean, this isn't an unusual easement. When they have billboards, they have that right
Right.
to egress and ingress, so they can service it and things like that. That's part of it. There was some discrepancies on boundaries and all kinds of stuff. This whole thing was really convoluted, and I think just to avoid it, we thought, well, let's try and clean it up and do it right, and that's what this is.
I guess the part that is odd to me, very odd, is Bighorn
Yeah,
involvement.
that was odd to us too.
But it's really not that odd. It's like selling a piece of property with the mineral rights, reserving
Exactly.
mineral rights, or,
Exactly.
or something.
But it was weird how they hung on to that for so long, and I don't know. But I think this does clean it up, and now we know who the parties are and where they are. That was the goal, was to get it cleaned up. So, and I still don't think it affects the property overall for a development. That corner's a different kind of piece anyway. The whole idea was that we wanted to preserve, if we put a sign on there or something like that, and I think we're okay on that part of it. So.
Any other comments, Mr. Arnold?
So, not to really throw a wrench in this whole thing, but it's a really weird shaped piece of property. The topography of the whole thing is just a nightmare. That's the reason it hasn't sold. UDOT is going to be using that piece of property behind it for several years because, with the new project coming through, they're going to want that for the 5600 project and all of that. We haven't reached any agreements that I'm aware of with Motel 6 or whatever that is over there to reconstruct anything. So my question, and I don't know if anybody knows about America First, because LaFleur's were saying, or Bighorn, I guess it would be, wanted to sell everything. And so it was kind of a deal that we worked with America First, right?
Mhm.
To take
Exactly.
that piece of property.
Right.
Because, I don't know why we want it. I mean, and the amount of money that this thing is going to go to put a sign on it I don't think it's a responsible purchase, because it's a dog, other than it's on Riverdale Road, that we're not going to be able to do anything with it. And if Reagan's got this easement through it that, they're trump us for sure. I don't understand why we're bellying up for this purchase. I mean, it doesn't seem responsible.
I think part of it, Alan, is that piece will be valuable. That it's just like the other piece we bought. We bought that knowing that we're never going to use that property, but at one point in time, a developer is going to want that because they're going to need the space. I think this one's the same thing because that's going to give us some frontage. If I understand UDOT correctly, and they end up putting that northbound connection on I-15, they're going to take a good chunk of their piece, which means this corner piece is going to be the primary piece that's going to allow, and that's why that sign's so important. So that development, if and when that ever happens, that piece becomes more valuable because that's the one exposure we got. And we're going to need that for that reason. And so it does, I mean, for a developer, again, assuming they get Motel 6, that could be a huge piece because that's going to be their exposure to Riverdale Road right there.
The other key piece is the access. If you don't have that corner parcel and someone else comes along, they start to control and hammer down on the access, then that Motel 6 property and the UDOT property becomes almost unattainable and undevelopable because you're cutting off any good frontage or good access where that driveway already exists. So the way Dee's looked at it historically, and again, this is why I wish he was here. He could articulate this a lot better. But it's what Steve said as far as visibility and its accessibility. And if you cut those two things off, then you're really losing the ability to develop the Motel 6 property and the UDOT property. And Dee has an arrangement with UDOT even to acquire that property if he can show them that he has control and access to get to that property. So if we don't get the corner parcel, then it makes it hard to justify to them, even if we were to somehow work out something to get the Motel 6 property, they're not going to play ball without showing that we have full access to their property.
I mean, our investment's fairly secure as far as getting our money back out of it, because I mean, it's like buying a dog. I mean, it's just.
I agree with you. At the time when that happened, though, we got a phone call from Dee, and we had a day to make a decision, basically, because otherwise Dewey Reagan buys it. And it was our attempt to control that, and that's why we jumped on
the other
that
challenge.
thing.
They're ready to exercise the right of first refusal just to buy it outright, and then we have no say on
Control,
what happens
yeah.
with it.
Okay.
So that was why we jumped on that. And just as another FYI, I actually talked to there's a new regional director over Motel 6 and a new manager of that Motel 6 up there. I talked to them last week, and I'm going to set up another meeting where we can sit down. We didn't talk about that in per se. I mean, I gave them an earful about what we feel about Motel 6 up there and how we need to improve that. And to her credit, she's aware of that. It's a female. She's really sharp, and she's already brought in a landscaping crew and trimmed a lot of those bushes and trees so that the homeless and stuff can't congregate in there and hide and all those kind of things. She's well aware of our concerns and our situation, but I'm going to meet with her and again discuss some of these other things as well as America First, because we're doing all these different things up there. We haven't been touching bases with our neighbors here, so I'm going to meet. I already contacted Steve earlier this week about getting me in contact with America First so we can kind of make sure we're all on the same team and they know we support them. And then the other guy up there, what's his name, that's already Rob Reynolds. I'll be meeting with all of them within the next couple of weeks so we make sure we're all on the same team, or at least they feel like we're aware of their situation. I don't want to leave them hanging because right. So I'm working on that. This is all, like I said, this is just all coming down just recently. So
Good questions, good comments.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Arnold?
I'd move to approve resolution R 2021-04 as stated within the packet.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the council?
The board.
Board. Thank you. Dang it, I was doing so good.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Arnold?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis?
Aye.
Okay, looks like it's unanimous, so thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2. That was going to be an update on the 550 West RDA area from D. Hansen.
anymore.
We're going to have one last.
I would just table that.
Okay.
we can bring it up when we get him here. He's traveling, just so we
Yeah.
have that on the record. We apologize. We were trying to coordinate that. So we need him in that meeting tomorrow too as well. So
And does that require a motion to table that, or we just? Okay,
Yes.
So, Mr. Arnold,
Motion to table action item number 2.
we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none. That's good. All right. Next is discretionary items.
Do we take that off just like
Yeah.
we did on the council? So we don't have discretionary on this one as well?
we probably should.
I think we should. Yeah.
we could do a similar thing if you just wanted us
Comments.
reports or something like that.
Report, staff report.
Yeah.
We'll have that done corrected next time.
Okay. Thank you. Good catch, Mr. Arnold. If that's it, we'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. And we stand adjourned.